In the early 2000s, an event occurred that literally turned the established world of aviation upside down. One of the first Airbus A320 passenger planes sold to China unexpectedly disappeared from view. There were no flight records or passenger data left, as if the plane had simply vanished into thin air. For the French manufacturers, this was a real shock. The airliner, worth nearly $100 million, suddenly disappeared from the radar, turning into something that soon earned the nickname Ghost Plane. 2 decades later, the mystery of its disappearance was partially unveiled thanks to French intelligence. It turned out that the plane had been dismantled into the smallest details to copy each one. This marked the birth of China's ambitious C919 project, which was meant to challenge the 2 giants of global aviation, Boeing and Airbus. However, despite the global crisis and shortage of airliners, almost no one outside China wants to fly on the C919. Why did this happen? The answer to this question reveals the hidden mechanisms of the global aviation market. The C919 is China's first narrow-body passenger aircraft, developed by the Comac Corporation. Its official presentation took place when China needed an alternative to giants like the Boeing 737 MAX and Airbus A320 neo. These 2 renowned brands had dominated the skies for decades. The narrow-body aircraft market is a key link in the civil aviation industry. Such airliners daily transport millions of passengers within countries and on short-haul routes. More than half of the world's aircraft fleet is accounted for by Boeing and Airbus. The 2 giants have created an almost unshakable monopoly, controlling up to 90% of the market. But recently, this system has started to falter. Disasters and scandals surrounding Boeing, related to safety and production quality, have shaken trust in the company. Airbus, despite a sharp increase in orders, is physically unable to ramp up production to fill the gaps left by its American competitor. It was during this period that China saw an opportunity for itself. Beijing's plans were simple and ambitious. First, to conquer the vast domestic market, where China has significant capabilities, and then to enter the international arena with the aim of taking part of the global skies from Western corporations. However, everything changed when former head of French intelligence, Alain Juillet, made a sensational statement. In a documentary about the secret war between France and China, he claimed that the Chinese C919 aircraft is nothing more than a copy of the Airbus A320, the ghost plane, dismantled and copied down to the smallest details, which disappeared in the early 2000s, became a donor for the Chinese project. Former Airbus Vice President for Economic Security, Patrick Devoux, confirmed these findings. According to him, the missing A320 was deliberately dismantled in China with the sole purpose of accurately reproducing the original. He spoke directly about the striking similarities between the C919 and its European competitor. In 2021, the mysterious ghost plane was found in Jiangsu province, abandoned but still recognizable. This became a key confirmation of existing suspicions. However, Airbus has always officially denied accusations of industrial espionage. The reason is simple: diplomacy and business. Directly accusing China of theft could ruin multi-billion-dollar contracts and strategic relationships. As Devoux noted, if you put yourself in the place of the Airbus head or the foreign minister, would you outright say, "You stole our plane"? It would change nothing except the loss of the Chinese market. Even if the scandal was hushed up, it does not explain the main thing. Why, with such a global aircraft shortage, does no one outside China want to buy the C919? At first glance, the statistics look impressive. The program has gathered over 850 orders from 24 clients. This is more than some European and Brazilian competitors, such as the Embraer E2 or Airbus A320. For a newcomer to the market, this could be a real triumph. But here's the catch. 23 out of the 24 customers are Chinese companies or state leasing structures. Essentially, the demand for the C919 is artificially created within the country, and outside of it, there is no trust in the aircraft. Why? It all comes down to safety, certification, and reputation. For airlines in the West and other regions of the world, purchasing an aircraft is not just a matter of price. This is a question of reliability assurance, access to a global maintenance system, certification by international regulators, and confidence that the manufacturer can withstand decades of operation. The Chinese government directly owns almost all of the country's airlines through state corporations. Comac, the developer of the C919, is also state-owned. At first glance, this provides a huge advantage. When the customer and manufacturer are under the same control, demand can be artificially created. But even in the context of a global aircraft shortage, if desperate airlines from Asia or Africa are not placing orders, the main question arises. Why hasn't the C919 managed to win over a single, truly international client? The answer lies in three key weaknesses that expose the vulnerability of the Chinese project. The first is performance. The reality is that the C919 cannot compete with its Western counterparts in terms of flight range or fuel efficiency. This sounds almost absurd, considering that the Chinese airliner is a completely new 21st century project, created with modern aerodynamic solutions and engineering developments in mind. Meanwhile, its competitors, the Airbus A320 and Boeing 737 MAX, are platforms whose origins date back to the 1980s, and in some cases even the 1960s. Logically, the new Chinese aircraft should have surpassed these outdated machines. But the opposite happened. The reason is not that COMAC's engineers did a poor job. The real problem is the suppliers. Here's the shocking truth. 91% of the C919's parts are not produced by Chinese companies. China, often called the factory of the world, was not ready to create the most complex components for modern airliners domestically. Therefore, COMAC had to rely on Western manufacturers. And here arises a fundamental conflict. Western companies are well aware that China has been copying foreign technologies for decades. Therefore, even participating in the C919 project, they consciously refuse to share the most advanced solutions. The result? The Chinese airliner is mostly assembled from last-generation technologies. Yes, these are reliable components, but not the best in the world. This is especially evident in the engine. On paper, the C919 is equipped with the LEAP 1C turbofan engine, part of one of the most advanced families of aviation engines in history. Its analogs, the LEAP 1A and LEAP 1B, are installed on the A320 Neo and 737 MAX and provide about 15% fuel savings compared to previous generations. But as a Forbes investigation found, the Chinese version of the LEAP is more of a compromise. Overall, it is closer to the old CFM56 engine from the 1970s than to modern technologies. Under the guise of a new name lies an engine that has long exhausted its potential and cannot compete with modern samples. The consequences of this are obvious. The real flight range of the C919 model is about 5,000 kilometers. For comparison, Airbus A320N models can easily cover up to 6,500 kilometers. A difference of 1,500 kilometers in passenger aviation is critical and can significantly influence the choice of airlines. This is the first and very significant aspect to consider. The second problem facing the Chinese aviation industry is the reliability of the supply chain. To understand why it is so difficult for China to create successful passenger aircraft, one must delve deeper into the success history of giants like Boeing and Airbus. These companies have built their dominance over decades, utilizing an extensive network of suppliers and partners worldwide. When comparing the three modern aircraft, the C919, Boeing 737 MAX, and Airbus A320 Neo, one can see that on paper their specifications appear quite similar. However, in reality, the Chinese aircraft clearly fall short in the crucial criteria of reliability and supply chain stability. Boeing and Airbus have created a truly global network of suppliers, encompassing thousands of companies from numerous countries. Each of these companies has undergone certification and numerous inspections, ensuring the reliability of supplies and the quality of components. This system not only supports the construction of new aircraft, but also their maintenance and operation, from spare parts to service support anywhere on the planet. In contrast, the Chinese corporation finds itself in a situation where much of the complex equipment, including landing gear, control systems, avionics, computing units, and hydraulics, has to be imported. Herein lies the danger. Any political tension or imposition of sanctions could instantly paralyze the program. Boeing and Airbus have created something akin to an invisible framework of global aviation, consisting of a network of suppliers and partners spanning dozens of countries. Companies from Japan, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, Italy, Germany, and many other nations participate in the design and production of their aircraft. This international cooperation provides Western manufacturers access to cutting-edge technologies, from the most complex avionics and hydraulic systems to innovative materials and engines. But the main advantage is the global support network, which includes spare parts, service centers, repair bases, and highly qualified specialists available anywhere in the world. The Chinese corporation, on the other hand, finds itself in a position where this entire infrastructure is simply absent. The situation worsened when the United States added the Chinese corporation to a list of companies allegedly supporting the Chinese military sector. This effectively blocked access to American technologies and investments. Even if these barriers were to suddenly disappear, the Chinese airliner would face another problem: the lack of an after-sales service system. For airlines, supporting an aircraft after its purchase is often more important than its initial price. Maintenance and repair account for up to 15% of operational costs, and delays in parts supply can make operation economically unviable. The experience of Chinese military aircraft is enough to confirm this. For example, the GF-17 fighter, created with China's participation and positioned as a cheap alternative to the F-16 model, appeared competitive on paper. However, a few years later, the Pakistani and especially the Burmese air forces began to massively decommission these machines due to constant technical problems. As a result, some GF-17 fighters ended up grounded, while the F-16, developed back in the 1970s, continues to fly reliably around the world for decades. This reliability gap is a clear testament to the challenges facing the Chinese aviation industry in terms of trust. The third problem is mass production. For the C919 to truly become a significant player on the international stage and fill the niche between Boeing and Airbus, China needs to learn how to quickly and massively produce aircraft. However, here it faces a harsh reality. China is known as the factory of the world, capable of producing millions of smartphones and cars. But passenger airliner production is a completely different universe. An aircraft consists of 1 million parts, each requiring extreme precision and compliance with strict aviation standards. There is no room for compromise here, as the slightest mistake can cost hundreds of lives. Boeing's experience with its quality crisis on the 737 MAX model vividly shows that even the largest manufacturer with decades of experience can be on the brink of disaster due to a few engineering miscalculations. The Chinese corporation is still learning. Over more than 10 years of serial production, it has produced only 10 aircraft, averaging less than 1 plane per year. In comparison, Boeing and Airbus produce more than 1 aircraft per day. Yes, the Chinese corporation has ambitious plans. In 2024, they intend to increase production to 7 machines per year, and by the 2030s, to reach a level of 150 aircraft annually. This is significant growth, but even if these ambitious plans come to fruition, it will take decades to fulfill just the current orders. For airlines that need new aircraft now, this is too long a wait. But despite all the difficulties and obstacles, no one disputes China's enormous potential. The country has a huge domestic market, almost limitless financial resources, and experience in complex manufacturing. Even the leaders of Airbus and Boeing acknowledge that in the long term, China poses a real threat to their duopoly. However, the current reality is that the C919 remains the least attractive option for international airlines. Insufficient range, outdated technologies and critical systems, supply issues, and slow production make it a choice solely for the domestic market, where the state can dictate which aircraft will be used. To truly change the balance of power, the Chinese corporation will have to abandon the strategy of copying and catching up. The only path to success is through its own innovations, world-class technologies, and decades of systematic work. And here arises the main question of the future. Is the People's Republic of China ready to spend decades creating a genuine school of aircraft manufacturing? Or will it remain a country that once took apart someone else's aircraft and tried to build its own?